إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. Brothers and sisters, I want you to imagine for yourselves that you have just learned how to swim. That you are taking some classes on how to stay afloat, on how to move in the water, and you have just learned to swim. You've done level 1 of swimming. And your instructor says, great job, tomorrow we're going to go out to sea and I'm going to have you swim in the middle of the ocean. We're going to go out in the deep waters, over 100 feet of water underneath you, and I want you to immediately start swimming amongst all of the waves. You would look at them and you would stare. You would be shocked. You would be puzzled. Why would someone ask you to do such a thing? Believe it or not, brothers and sisters, many times the way that we approach knowledge, the way we approach seeking knowledge, learning more about our religion, and practicing our religion follows the same type of analogy. That we enter the faith and we begin doing some good, and suddenly we're off to the races. We think of ourselves as someone learned, a scholar perhaps, someone qualified, and we go off into the deep end quite literally. Brothers and sisters, in today's khutbah this afternoon, I'd love for us to reflect together and think about our intentions for seeking this knowledge and realizing that it is not a destination that we can say, I have now achieved knowledge, I have acquired all of knowledge, but rather we take the time to reflect that it is a journey, and a worthwhile journey for every single person in this room. This khutbah is not meant for someone who is planning to devote their entire lives, though it is applicable. This khutbah is not meant for just a few select that will devote their lives to it, even though it may be applicable, but rather it's for every single one of us. For as the Prophet ﷺ said, seeking knowledge is an obligation on every single Muslim, male and female. And the important thing for all of us, inshaAllah, is to realize it is that path. And the scholars have outlined a few ways for us to keep in mind this. And inshaAllah, we'll cover 3 of them today. The first one to focus on is really why. Why am I talking about this now? Why is seeking knowledge so important? Why is it a path for us worth taking? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Most definitely, those that have true khushu', that have true fear and awareness and humility in front of Allah, are those of His servants that are knowledgeable. مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. And the scholars have defined this in many ways. Some meaning al-ulama, meaning you're an alim, you are an actual scholar. Those are the ones that truly have gotten to know Allah. And others say that that is part of the meaning, and it is also those that know Allah, meaning those that have been seeking knowledge and have gotten closer to learning about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His names, through His attributes, through learning the Quran, through learning the Sunnah. And the Prophet said something very amazing, something for all of us to reflect on, where he said that the virtue of the scholar, of someone who has amassed a great deal of knowledge and is practicing it and teaching it, the virtue of a scholar over a worshipper is like my virtue. The Prophet is saying, the Prophet ﷺ's virtue over the least of you. Imagine a Prophet and the audience he's speaking to, the Sahaba. Even the least, if you will, even those that just embraced Islam were still the best generation. But the difference is still staggering between a Prophet and a believer. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is telling us that the merit of a believer, of a scholar, over just a abid, meaning someone who prays their salah, someone who gives their zakah, someone who may not do any of the extra sunan, but they are doing the bare minimum, and inshallah for them is also paradise, as the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith. But the difference between them and a scholar who actually works to study Islam is like that of the Prophet ﷺ and the rest of us and his Sahaba. And that's amazing. And what's even more amazing, when you start looking at the hadith about knowledge, you find something very interesting. First, it is mentioned that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends His blessings as do the angels. And it mentions the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth, and those we can understand. Why the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth? Because without our scholars, we would not be on the straight path. Without people to guide us, we would not be on the path of truth. As the Prophet ﷺ said in another hadith, that verily knowledge will not be taken from this world except through the death of scholars. Meaning that the way we learn our religion is from other people. It is not merely through a Google search or through opening a book, but it is through a qualified sanad. It is through a chain connected to the Prophet ﷺ. Because then you don't just have knowledge, but you have the understanding, you have the manners, you have the humility, you have everything together when you learn it in a real manner. But what's mentioned after that? It mentions, and all of the inhabitants of the heavens and the earth will make dua for them, will send blessings upon them, including the ant in his hole and the fish in the sea. Why would the ant make dua for you and me if we seek knowledge? Why would the fish in the sea make dua for you and me if I decide to learn Islam, if I decide to grow in my deen? Part of it is that because we are doing an act of good and we are on the path of goodness, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded them to do so. That is part of it. But also, if you take the time to reflect on this, it is that knowledge has a positive impact on your heart and on your actions, on everything you do. You may think that you're just academically studying fiqh or seerah or Arabic and something that you're just doing in the mind. But the beauty of Islamic knowledge of our deen, of our religion, of our way of living, is that it impacts everything you do. A true scholar, a true student of knowledge is not arrogant. A true student of knowledge is not someone who cheats in business. A true student of knowledge is not someone who lies or deceives others. A true student of knowledge is good to their family. And that is point number one, which is realize why you're doing this. It is to come closer to Allah. And many times we try coming closer to Allah in other means, and they're all acceptable, through donating, through volunteering, through sharing something that is good. But realize the best thing that you can do is to seek knowledge. and it will have the best return on investment. It will, of all the things you can do with your time, the best outcome from the time that you put in is seeking that knowledge. Because you will see it make everything better. A lot of the issues that we see in society now, of corruption, of bloodshed, a lot of them could be improved through seeking of this knowledge in the proper means. And we ask Allah to make us among them. When you look even at the people of Palestine, and we ask Allah to help them through all of their hardship. There is a beautiful story shared recently where some people observed that there were these young youth that were memorizing Quran as bombs are falling around them. And they are asking them that, why are you focused on this? You could be seeking more food, seeking shelter, seeking refuge somewhere else, or doing so many other things with your time. But you're reciting Quran and memorizing and reviewing and testing one another. What is making you spend your time with the Quran right now? And subhanAllah, these young youth, raised well, they said, we don't know how long we have left on this earth. And I wish that if I am to pass, I can be in the highest level of paradise possible. Subhanallah. I am hoping that when Allah takes me and I am questioned about how much Quran I know, that I can be at the highest level possible. And I hope and pray I can become a hafiz and memorize the entire Quran. But if not possible, at least I literally died trying. At least I died trying. Brothers and sisters, if that is the attitude of children in the middle of warfare, in the middle of an extremely difficult situation, what is our excuse? What are we doing to come closer to Allah? So that is point number one, is realizing the value of this knowledge and realizing that all of us here have a duty to seek that knowledge and to learn. Point number two, related to this, is to realize the path is long, but enjoy the process. It is not a specific destination. It is not like you can see Mount Everest and you said, okay, I'm going to go climb it. It's going to take me this many days, this many weeks, and here's the plan, and then I'm going to get there. I'll take the picture and I'm done. But rather, it is something for life. And merely getting a degree in it, merely being called an alim and so on, or getting an ijazah is not enough. It is something that we seek knowledge our entire lives. And it is not something that we just delegate to someone else. We say that, okay, maybe my time has passed. I'm past my prime. My children will learn. I'll sponsor them to learn. Or perhaps I'll sponsor this other student of knowledge who is studying. I'm going to send them some money. Those are all good, but that does not stop you. That does not preclude or exclude you from seeking your knowledge. And you learn based on your capability, but it's not something that you ever stop. It is a process you enjoy. As the Prophet ﷺ taught us that whoever seeks a path of knowledge, whoever seeks knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a path to paradise easy for him. The path to Jannah is the path of knowledge. And the opposite of that, the way that we're often taught in the Western context, that my goal is just to get knowledge up to a certain point and then I start working and I'm done with it. It is against the Sunnah. As Prophet teaches us, haste is from shaitan. That we're just like, okay, I just need to finish this module, this course, this certificate, this degree, and that's it. Abdullah bin Umar, he once said something profound. He says that knowledge is of three types. The Quran, an established sunnah, and saying, I don't know. He was saying by this that it is impossible ever to know everything in the world, even within our religion. You can get very deep into it, as we began talking about the example of the ocean, that perhaps we can get to a certain level, but if we go too deep too quickly, it's dangerous. But if we think we can encompass the entire ocean, that will get all the way to the bottom, that will be able to go everywhere in the ocean? It won't be possible. But the goal is to keep on trying, to keep on growing ourselves. And yes, there can be a certain, goals on the way, certain milestones on the way. Knowing how to read and write in Arabic, learning how to speak it, knowing the grammar of it, learning the Quran, learning fiqh, and so on and so forth. But then to say that you have fully mastered that topic and you have fully done everything on that and there's nothing left to learn, that is something that we're told isn't the case in Islam. That is why we see with Musa alayhi salam, even one of the most knowledgeable people ever, he was asked, and we know this when we recite Surah Al-Kahf, the story of Musa alayhi salam, that he says, based on his knowledge, he is asked, who is the most knowledgeable person on earth? And he says, I am. I'm the Prophet of Allah. Why would he have any reason to doubt that? And upon saying that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, commands him, go seek Al-Khidr, someone who is more knowledgeable than you. Go seek knowledge, O you Prophet, someone who thought you were the most knowledgeable person. Showing us, brothers and sisters, that there is always humility needed for us and there's always more to learn. But enjoy the process. It is not about the destination, but it is about the journey for us. For as you grow in life, you will see that there is so much more to learn. And when you feel like you've learned enough, suddenly something happens and you realize you don't know anything at all. And oftentimes, in fact, the most dangerous thing is when you encounter someone who just knows a little bit. Maybe they just read one hadith and they said, this hadith is it. Or this ayah is extremely clear. I can only do, this is haram based on this ayah. It's so clear. And it in fact impacts the family, because now the family acts a certain way because they're going off of this one ayah that they learned, not realizing why it was revealed, when it was revealed. Was there another ayah that adds more detail, or an ayah that abrogates that ayah? Or is there a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ explained it a certain way that we need to understand it? Or is it possible that the scholars will say, based on the context of living in the 21st century, living in the West, that there's a certain way to interpret it? Without any of that understanding, we take that one ayah and they start living by it. And that is very dangerous. And that often happens when someone thinks that little bit that they learned was enough. And so number 2 for us, brothers and sisters, is enjoy the process. And realize that we won't be like shaitan and just be hasty and just quick in trying to learn something, but we'll really take the time to learn it. A lot of students of knowledge that became scholars, they will share that when they would sit even in the circles of knowledge, when they would come to khutbahs or come to halaqas and come to different lessons, they would in many cases not even take from the knowledge in the beginning, they would take from the manners. They would take from the way that the person was talking, the way they interacted with others, because there was much to learn in just that. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us and to increase in our manners and knowledge. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Brothers and sisters, with everything going on in the world, it is very easy to put this in the back burner. This seeking of knowledge. It is very easy to say that because of the economy, because of inflation, I just need to double down and spend more time at work. It's very easy to say that we as an ummah need to focus on other things versus sitting in the masjid and focusing on this. But realize, brothers and sisters, that we as Muslims do not just believe in the world that we can see, but we believe in a world that we cannot see as well. And we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts barakah in our time when we are on His path. And that the world may think very linearly that there is something that you do and therefore there's an effect. But you learn from the Islamic traditions that it is anything but linear. And what I mean by that is that, we'll take one example, that there could be a youth going through some difficulty. And you think the way to solve the difficulty as someone, as an elder or as an older brother, older sister, that the way that you're going to solve their problem is that you're going to sit down with them and figure out the symptoms and, okay, maybe they need a job, let's go get them that job. Or they may need this and we're going to go get them this. But then you realize that if someone really good comes to them, someone who is qualified, someone with knowledge, with humility, with manners and so on, comes to them and talks to them, you realize that the problem wasn't the lack of the job or the lack of what they had, but the problem that they were experiencing was deeper. You realize that they didn't feel connected to Allah and therefore they didn't have that mission, that purpose in life. You realize the reason they were being lazy is because they weren't connected to Allah. And therefore they become better as a result. And that is something that is amazing, that you look at the Sahaba that had focused on following the Sunnah, that had focused on following the way of the Prophet ﷺ. And as a result of doing that, they experienced unprecedented success in the Muslim world, in the entire world. That even in the matters of the dunya, these same people that were shepherds in one generation, within their own lives they became rulers. They became khulafa, they became governors of very large swaths of land, became very successful even in the dunya. And we are not saying that seeking knowledge is just for those things so that you can become very rich, so that your bank account can have certain dollar values against it. But rather to say that you will not be missing out on the world just because you are seeking that knowledge, just because you are coming closer to that deen. And the practical way that all of this impacts us on a daily basis is, let's say you have 30 minutes before your next meeting, before the next work assignment that you have. And usually the way that you take it is that, okay, I'm going to work really hard, and in the last 5 minutes before the meeting, maybe I'll just pray in that time, just quickly make my salah. Instead, you flip the narrative. And you say that I will pray my salah properly. I will do my adhkar. I will pray my sunnah. I will take my sweet time in this specific instance of the salah, and Allah will put barakah in my work. And of course we tie the camel. After that, when you're at work, you're properly at work, you're doing it well, you're doing it excellently. But when the time for salah comes, as an example of coming closer to Allah, you are fully focused on that. And you will see you will have amazing benefits. Even non-Muslims now say, take intentional breaks. It's better than instead of just working 8 hours straight, take an hour, have lunch, talk to your family, go on a walk, do whatever. And those are all good things, but the best thing is that salah. And now if we expand and we take a step back, seeking that knowledge, coming closer to Allah, spending your time in ibadah, spending your time in learning your religion, will always pay dividends, and it will make your family life better, it will make your financial life better, it will make everything better. Because your life will suddenly be balanced because you've been seeking that knowledge. And that is the final point. Is having that humility to realize that maybe you don't know the best way, even in your own life, but you do know that what the Prophet ﷺ has taught you, which is to seek that knowledge forever, that it is a forever obligation. And then the way that you seek that knowledge, yes, primarily maybe through the hadith, through being in courses, but it is also, knowledge in Islam is not the way that we think of it in the West, of just a specific academic book knowledge. But Islam, in fact, emphasizes and advocates for experiential knowledge. Meaning that you learn through living, through speaking with your elders. A lot of times we unfortunately fall into the method of, what do our elders know? They didn't have the same knowledge we do, and we're going to go off our own path. But Islam, in fact, advocates and recommends, sit under the feet of scholars and your elders. For there could be someone who doesn't even know how to read or write, but they have more wisdom to offer you than you could ever receive in a book. They may share something with you that is more life-changing than 500 pages of just reading something. Their barakah from you serving them, from you helping them, your parents, your uncles, aunts, grandparents, elders, from you spending time with them got you closer to Allah and in fact taught you more as well. So brothers and sisters, putting everything together of what we talked about. Number one, never deprioritize knowledge and learning more. The people of Palestine are still seeking knowledge, are still learning Quran, still learning their religion, knowing it is the best thing, knowing it is the thing that they want to take with them to the hereafter. Number two, realize it is a journey. Realize that it is going to take your whole life, but enjoy it. Be happy that you're always on it. You don't immediately need to go into teaching this knowledge as soon as you've learned something. No, take some time to seep it and let it kind of sit within you. As the Sahaba would say that we would learn a verse and we would try implementing before learning the next verse. Try that in your own life. A lot of times we feel the urge to just immediately start seeking knowledge and then start teaching it immediately. Okay, I've learned this hadith, let me just tweet about it or put it on Facebook or Instagram. No, take some time to sit with it on your own and learn a little bit more about it, because perhaps it isn't the best thing for you to share immediately. Perhaps it is better for you to learn a little bit more. And number three is be humble. Have that humility throughout all of this. That we don't go around calling ourselves as scholars or to be very qualified in whatever we've learned, no matter how much we've learned. But we have that humility in our lives. And inshallah, we will see that our ummah will transform, will change when every single one of us takes that time to study that knowledge ourselves. Not just waiting for the next generation to study, not just waiting for a few other people to save us, as the children of Israel would tell Musa a.s. that, you go and free Jerusalem. You go and get us a promised land. We won't do anything. No, the best way all of us can help in the world is by each and every single one of us learning more about our religion. We end with the dua, Allahumma inna nas'aluka ilman nafi'a wa rizqan tayyiba wa amalan mutaqabbala. Oh Allah, we ask you for beneficial knowledge, for a healthy provision, and wa amalan mutaqabbala, and with accepted deeds. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those that are learned, to be amongst those that are considered His servants of the ulama. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from all of the good that we do and to always keep us on the path of good. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the prophets and the righteous and the learned in Jannatul Firdaus. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وأقم الصلاة